Let me ask you,
just on a number
let me ask you a political question. And I've been trying to square this one in my head for a long time.
Yeah.
In the last 2 or 3 years, you have moved decidedly to the right, I think.
Have I?
Well, we can discuss this. I think that you have been espousing and promoting a number of Republican candidates and others. You've been very frustrated with the Biden administration over, I think, unions and feeling like they did not respect what you've created.
Well, I mean, without any, doing nothing to provoke the Biden administration, they held an electric vehicle summit at the White House and specifically refused to let Tesla attend. This was in the first 6 months of the administration. And we inquired, we're like, we literally make more electric cars than everyone else combined. Why are we not allowed? Why are you only letting Ford, GM, Chrysler, and UAW, and you're specifically disallowing us from the EV summit at the White House? We'd done nothing to provoke them. Then Biden went on to add insult to injury and publicly said that GM was leading the electric car revolution. This was in the same quarter that Tesla made 300,000 electric cars and GM made 26. Does that seem fair to you?
So, but tell me this then. It doesn't seem fair. And I've asked repeatedly, you've probably seen me.
And by the way, I had a great relationship with Obama. So there was not a.
So, but then there's this.
I voted for Obama. I stood in line for 6 hours to shake Obama's hand. Okay.
So let me just ask on a personal level. I can see it in your face. This hurt you personally.
And it hurt the company too. And it was an insult to, Tesla has 140,000 employees. Okay, of the half of them are in the United States. Tesla has created more manufacturing jobs than everyone else combined.
So let me ask this then. You've devoted at least the last close to 20 years of your life, if not more, to the climate change, trying to get Tesla off the ground, in part to improve climate. You've talked about that.
Yeah, a real right-wing motive.
Repeatedly.
God, far right, if anything.
I understand that. And then it's
right. Reverse psychology next level.
Well, no, but so here's then the question, which is how do you square the support that you have given? I believe you were at a fundraiser for Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, who says that the climate issue is a hoax, right?
Yeah, I disagree with him on that.
But I would think that would be such a singular issue for you. I would think that the climate issue would be such a singular issue for you that actually it would disqualify almost anybody who didn't take that issue seriously.
Well, I haven't endorsed anyone for president. I mean, I wanted to hear what Vivek had to say because I think some of his things some of the things he says I think are pretty solid. He's concerned about government overreach, about government control of information. The degree to which old Twitter was basically a sock puppet of the government was ridiculous. It seems to me that there's a very severe violation of the First Amendment in terms of how much government control, how much control the government had over old Twitter. And it no longer does. So, there's a reason for the First Amendment. The reason for the First Amendment for freedom of speech is because the people that immigrated to this country came from places where there was not freedom of speech. And they were like, you know what, we got to make sure that that's constitutional. Because where they came from, if they said something, they'd be put in prison. Or there'd be, something bad would happen to them. So, and freedom of speech, you have to say, when is it relevant? It's only relevant when someone you don't like can say something you don't like, or it has no meaning. And as soon as you sort of, throw in the towel and concede to censorship, it is only a matter of time before someone censors you. And that is why we have the First Amendment.
Could you see yourself voting for President Biden? If it's a Biden-Trump election, for example?
I think I would not vote for Biden.
You'd vote for Trump?
I'm not saying I'd vote for Trump, but I mean, this is definitely a difficult choice here. You know.
Would you vote for Nikki Haley? Nikki Haley, by the way, wants all social media names to be exposed, as you know.
No, I think that's outrageous. Yeah, no, I'm not going to vote for some pro-censorship candidate. Like I said, I mean, I think these you have to consider that there is a lot of wisdom in these amendments. You know, I mean, the Constitution. A lot of things that we take for granted here in the United States that don't even exist in Canada. There's no constitutional right to freedom of speech in Canada. So, it's not, and there's no Miranda rights in Canada. People think you have the right to remain silent. You don't actually in Canada. I'm half Canadian. I can say these things, I suppose. The freedom of speech is incredibly important. Even when people, and like I said, it's actually especially important. In fact, it is only relevant when people you don't like can say things you don't like.
And do you think right now that
they're meaningless?
You think right now the Republican candidates or the Democrats are more inclined? I mean, this is where you go to, I assume, to woke and anti-woke and the mind virus issue that you've talked about. Which party do you think is more pro freedom of speech, given all the things you've seen? Because we also see,
yes.
DeSantis, preventing people from reading certain things. Maybe you think that's correct.
No, look, we actually are in an odd situation here, where, on balance, the Democrats appear to be more pro-censorship than the Republicans. And that used to be the opposite. It used to be, the left position was freedom of speech. I believe at one point, the ACLU even defended the right of someone to claim that they were Nazi or something like that. So they really were the left was freedom of speech is fundamental. I mean, my at least perception, perhaps it isn't accurate, is that the pro-censorship is more on the left than the right. We certainly get more complaints from the left than the right, let me put it that way. But my aspiration for the X platform is that it is the best source of truth, or the least inaccurate source of truth. I don't know if people believe me or not, but I think honesty is the best policy, and I think that the truth will win over time. And we've got this great system, and it's getting better, called Community Notes, which is fantastic, I think, at correcting falsehoods or adding context. In fact, we make a point of not removing anything, but only adding context. Now, that context could include that this is completely false, and here's why. And no one is immune to this. I'm not immune to it. Advertisers are not immune to it. In fact, we've had Community Notes, which has caused us some loss in advertising. Speaking of loss in advertising revenue, if a community note, if there's false advertising, the community note will say, "This is false," and here is why. And there's one specific example that is public knowledge, so I'll mention it, which is at one point Uber had this ad which said, "Earn like a boss." And it was community noted, if by boss you mean $12.47 an hour, this did cause at least a temporary suspension of advertising from Uber.
I got to ask you a question that might make everybody in the room uncomfortable or not uncomfortable, but it goes to the free speech issue. The New York Times company and the New York Times newspaper, it appeared over the summer to be throttled.
What did?
The New York Times.
Well, we do require that that everyone has to buy a subscription, and we don't make exceptions for anyone. And I think if I want the New York Times, I have to pay for a subscription, and they don't give me a free subscription. So I'm not going to give them a free subscription.
But were you throttling the New York Times relative to other news organizations, relative to everybody else? Was it specific to the Times?
They didn't buy a subscription. By the way, it only costs like $1,000 a month. So if they just do that, then they're back in the saddle.
But you are saying that it was throttled.
No, I'm saying.
I mean, was there a conversation that you had with somebody? You said, look, you know, I'm unhappy with the Times. They should either be buying the subscription, or I don't like their content, or whatever.
Any organization that refuses to buy a subscription is not going to be recommended.
But then what does that say about free speech? And what does that say about amplifying
free speech
certain
is not exactly
voices?
free, it costs a little bit.
Right, but that's an interesting.
You know, it's like in South Park where they say, you know, freedom isn't free, it costs $1.05 or whatever. But it's pretty cheap, okay? It's low cost freedom.